This video is not about watch review specifically, but more about my thoughts on why watch review channels are ultimately doomed or they're going to reach a dead end. And how, when I went to Nakano Broadway, if you're not familiar with that, how that experience actually made me kind of rethink watches specifically for this channel. So Nakano Broadway, by the way, is an amazing place if you get a chance. If you love watches, that's an awesome place to just browse and look. If you're into Casios, I would say not so much because they don't really carry a lot of Casios. You got to go to other like department stores. But if you're in Japan and you have a chance to go to Broadway, I highly recommend it. If you're looking at like luxury watches, that is a place to go. Like tons of Rolexes, Omegas, you name IW, like so many watches. I looked at these. Is it Nomos? I was like, wow, that is a slick watch. That experience made me think a lot about watch YouTube in general. So this is pretty meta when it comes to watches and YouTube specifically. But when to kind of go back, when I was thinking about this YouTube channel and even starting a YouTube channel about my watches, about watches in general, you know, I did think about it for a while, not because I was scared to start, but because I knew that any channel that's about reviewing things like tech or anything, right? You're only as good as you can keep up with the trends or with buying things. And especially when it came to watches, I knew that eventually I'd reach a dead end because you can't buy watches forever, right? Like, if you look at a lot of the bigger watch channels, they're not buying watches, right? Like they're borrowing watches from people to get, and that's how they keep their channel alive. Maybe there are channels that they just buy watches and then they, I don't know, sell them or return them. I don't know what they do, but this channel was built on, I want to just talk about watches that would fit my small wrist, 6 1/4, and maybe help people out there who also have small wrists and who are like, I gotta see what this watch looks like. I don't know, and because a lot of watch buying nowadays is online, it's harder to figure that out. And so that was my goal, was just to buy watches, specifically Casio watches, and try to buy it and try to help people out who have a smallish wrist, right? So my wrist is 6 1/4, 2 inches basically across, and a lot of the watches were just too big, and a lot of the watch reviews focus on those bigger watches, and I was like, they look good on your 7 1/4 inch wrist, but what about my 6 1/4 inch wrist? How would that look? And they just, excuse me, there just weren't a lot of reviews out there, specifically for the watches that I wanted. So I bought all the watches that I wanted to buy, and I wanted to make videos specifically about those watches, talking about in the context of someone with a smaller wrist. And I thought maybe that'd be helpful. But also there's a lot of watches, there weren't a lot of videos about some of the watches that I did buy. So that was part of the reason why I wanted to do it. But I knew that eventually I'd reach like a ceiling, because unless I wanted to keep buying watches forever, and this channel is not self-sustaining in that way, which is totally fine, eventually I'd be like, okay, what am I gonna do? Just keep buying like 50 watches a year, you know? And that is just not sustainable, right? Like, and unfortunately, this YouTube thing is just something I just do for fun. And mostly I just want to do it because I like talking about watches, and I figured my wife doesn't want to hear me talk about watches all the time. So at least if I make videos talking about watches, reviewing them, it would be better. And also, like, I wanted to talk about watches that I have used, right? Like a lot of reviews are like, hey, check out, hey, or sorry, let me get it better. They hold the watches and they go like, hey, check out this review of this watch. I just got it in. Here's the unboxing. Here's my first impressions of this watch. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, and then, oh wait, let me put it on my wrist for like 5 seconds. Okay, yeah, like that was typically what I saw and sort of see still. But I wanted to talk about watches as just actually used it, and like talking with a friend, like, yeah, I bought this watch. Bought it, I've used it for like a while, like, let me talk about it. And that's what I wanted to do with this channel. But again, eventually I realized, like, yeah, I can't keep buying watches forever because it's, one, not sustainable, but two, I just don't have the space, right? And then it just becomes like, do I just buy watches just for the YouTube channel? It's like, nah, I don't think so. So let me tie this all into Nakano Broadway, right? Because that's sort of the bookend of this whole thing. But keep that in mind. That's what I've been thinking about since the beginning of this YouTube channel all the way up until now, is like, am I just gonna buy watches forever? And I had mapped out all these videos for at least a year on this channel. Like, I do reviews, but then also I want to do like comparisons and other things, so that not every video is like, here's a new watch, you know, like it gets to be kind of boring, and I just didn't want to be a review channel in that sense, which is why I like the comparison stuff and just talking about watches in general. To me, that's a lot more interesting than just, here's a new watch, here, you should get it, here's the specs. It's kind of boring, to be honest. But how this ties into Nakano Broadway. Okay, so as I'm walking around, there are beautiful watches everywhere. Like, every store it's just amazing. And it just got me thinking about the watch hobby in general, though. It could be like, it almost seems like it's endless. I like Casio watches because of their utility, variety, somewhat affordability, I guess. It varies, but like, I like the Casio watch as a brand. But going to Nakano Broadway, I realized there's a whole bunch of different watches. And of course I know that. But seeing them in person, I'm like, wow, like Casio is a small fish in a huge pond. I mean, they're a big fish, but relative to the watch community, I don't know what you have, but just watches in general, like, they have their own little pond within like this huge like series of ponds. I don't know where this analogy is going, but like, I just realized as I was walking around, like, there's so many different brands out there, so many different looks and types of watches, different types of watch enthusiasts, I guess, because, you know, as I'm going to store, like, people are looking at different stuff, right? I'm walking in there and I'm like, there's like, again, like barely any of the stores have like Casio. And again, department stores will have their own section, but like when you go to Broadway, it's like there's no like Casio section. It's like there's like all these other sections, you know, but Casio, they're not even big enough to have their own section because this is, again, built towards more like luxury watches. And I guess to that sense, it made me realize that, you know, when it comes to like reviewing watches, you want to have like your specialty, your niche. And for me, it's Casio watches that is smaller, on the smaller end, but that's like the niche that I was like looking at. But that it's a very small one, but I'm sure very much appreciated, though. I should mention that, but very much appreciated, because had there been like a Nakano Broadway like Casio store, I would have been there like all day. But that's like a very small portion of like overall watches. And again, that's not to say, oh, I'm just gonna buy all these different watches, but it just made me realize as I was walking around, like, oh yeah, like Casio's like a very small player, you know, in all these different watches. And there's so many watches to really appreciate. I mean, they had so many Grand Seikos there. I'm like, oh gosh, you know, like, don't want to go there. Beautiful watches, you know, quartz, reliable, but with at a price, right? And I also realized too that there's a lot of smaller watches out there. Like, a lot of the watches I thought were big were actually really small. Like, I was like, oh, there are a lot of small watches out there. If I was looking for a smaller watch, there's a lot of smaller watches out there. And even like some of the Casio watches, I should mention, there are a couple of Oceanus watches that I saw that, man, they were real good. Like, they look nice. I think one was the OCW 600. It was this black, like, chrono Oceanus watch. Boy, it was small. It would fit my wrist perfectly, and it was cheap. I think it would have came out to about $100 USD, maybe like $110, like right above $100. Beautiful watch, used. And then there was I think it's called the P1000 Oceanus watch. dive watch, but very, very fancy looking. I think it would have been about, I want to say it would have been about maybe 400, like 50, 460 USD. And man, that was a nice watch. And it wasn't big. Like on the pictures, it looks huge, but like when I put it on my wrist, I was like, oh, this could work. Especially as a dive watch, it could work. As an Oceanus, I was like, man, this is nice. So they did have some Casios out there, but yeah, just going out there made me just realize like there's a lot more to watch collecting, and this is all stuff I probably could have figured out without going to Japan, but seeing it at Nakano Broadway, it different. You experience that. It's very different, and how that ties into to YouTube, kind of go more into part 3 of this series, but again, like thinking about the watch review genre, right? Like there is somewhat of a ceiling, and going to Nakano Broadway, I realized the ceiling. Like it was very, very apparent. Like when you go shopping for watches, it made me just realize like, yeah, there is a box. The Casio box is big, but when you're looking specifically at watches that fit like a smaller wrist, because you can go big like frog, you can go with the frogs, you can go with MTGs, and you can go big with the MRGs, right? Like price-wise big. But as a whole, right, you got the Casios, right? The 2100s, you got the 5600s, the squares. And again, a lot of those are just, I feel like they're just too big for my wrist. So for me, like it cuts off a lot of what Casio is doing, because while those watches may look good, I'm just not looking at them because I want something a little bit smaller. But it just made me realize like the Casio box is big, but it's still small at the same time, if that makes sense. So anyway, I just want to share some of my thoughts. Hopefully this makes sense. But if you do get a chance though, Nakano Broadway, if you just love watches and walking around and browsing and seeing very expensive watches, that is definitely the place to go. And I really enjoyed myself there. So just wanted to share that. But yeah, with this whole watch YouTube thing, it is finite. And I realized that even before I started. But I still want to make videos anyway, so it didn't stop me. But like, if you look at a lot of watch YouTube channels, especially like that mid-size, like you get to like the 2,000 to like maybe like 10,000 subscriber-ish area, maybe even more, like they don't last forever. And I think maybe they're not supposed to last forever. But I hope that my videos over the course of making them has helped people. At least that's, it covered watches that might help somebody when maybe the bigger channels don't really have time for that. And that I can speak from a place of experience because I actually bought the watches and I've worn them a while before just making the reviews and busting them out of the box and being like, hey, here's all the features, and that's what it looks like. Okay, oh, but this is, like I hope that it's a different style of video that was very, is very helpful for people. So anyway, love to hear your thoughts on that. But yeah, this is part 2.